Welcome to Silver Bar Stacker, folks. I hope everybody's doing well and enjoying their Friday. That's right, folks. Today is Friday, and thank goodness it's the end of the week. Now, today we've got a very exciting show for you today because we're going to be covering a very special topic, in my opinion. We're going to be covering the USVI Ingot Company pieces. Now, the USVI Ingot Company is one of my favorite refiners to collect pieces by, and it has a pretty good representation on the silverbarstacker.com website, I would say. It's outside of Engelhard and Matthey. I would say my next favorite refiner to collect pieces by would be USVI Ingot Company, and they just have a very, very special, rich, and short history. But there's a lot of interesting pieces out there to collect, and some that you may not even know about. Even a lot of the USVI Ingot collectors may not really be fully aware that, hey, there's a lot more pieces out there that we could be kind of adding to the stack, and these all sort of vary in premiums. Now, the reason I felt like focusing on the USVI Ingot Company today is because we just had Silverstruck, our friend, post another awesome freaking video, and that's another one that I highly recommend that you all check out because it is a very, very awesome behemoth of a freaking video. He showcases a mountain of USVI ingot stackers, and that is a very, very fun episode to watch. So I highly recommend you go take a pause on this video, head over to Silverstruck's channel and check out that video, and then once you've basked in the glory of all that awesomeness, you can come back over here and we can get a little bit nerdy with respect to the USVI Ingot Company pieces. Now, this isn't a full representation of all the examples, but I wanted to just take a nice sampling of the different types of USVI Ingot Company pieces that are out there that you should want to keep an eye out for. Now, like I said, these vary in premium. So you got very, very more affordable type of things here on maybe closer to this side of the table, and then kind of maybe as you move towards the right side, you get to more rarer and obscure and higher premium items. Now, there are items here that are sitting on this table that are, these are all 1 ounce pieces here. There's some pieces over here that are selling for upwards of $1,000 an ounce, right? I mean, we've seen them selling sometimes for $2,000 an ounce. So it's pretty crazy because the lower end of the spectrum is that, hey, they might run for like $40 an ounce. Now, $40 an ounce is still a pretty high premium when it comes down to anything, but these are all 1 ounce pieces, and so when it comes down to vintage silver, especially vintage silver that's a little bit more sought after, you got to expect to pay a little bit of a premium. Of course, there are rules to that exception, many rules to that exception, because there are many people who are savvy about the way that they stack, and they're very smart about how they obtain things. So a lot of people have a good relationship with their local coin shop, and hey, maybe sometimes that local coin shop owner might hold some of those pieces for you that you're looking after if you kind of have a good relationship with them. And of course, there are other ways to get good deals on things such as auctions. I know I myself am pretty frequently giving out deals because what happens is on an auction, especially a live format auction, is you'll start things sometimes at $1, and there might just be 7 or 12 people in the room, and only a couple of them are willing to actually purchase the item. And so in that situation where it's not a 10-day auction or something like that, you have people getting stuff for crazy deals. I mean, I myself have legitimately sold Prospector 1 ounce rounds for $1, which is actually unheard of. The local coin shop's never going to sell you an ounce of silver for $1, but it's been known to happen on live format auctions. So that is a little bit of a side rant there, but before we get into the nerdy stuff, I thought I would just talk about some real world stuff. So here we go. We have a big table of Engelhard stuff because it's just stuff that just kind of came in or that I've been having in my box for my ongoing auctions. But what we're here to talk about today is this USVI Ingot Company collection that we've got here. Now, like I said, this is not every example out there, but this is going to give you a good indicator of what to look for when you kind of start your journey collecting. Now, speaking of starting the journey collecting, I would say some of the more common examples would be these two bad boys right here. Now, this is something that is not actually produced by USVI Ingot Company, and this is probably the only piece here, actually definitely the only piece here that is not produced by the USVI Ingot Company. But this is one that I like to collect as well, because typically, at least in the recent past, they used to go at a relatively lower premium, but now they're actually kind of higher premium. In fact, sometimes I've had to pay more for these than I've had to pay for these, and it's kind of funny. But these are kind of vintage bars that I like to look out for, because while they weren't produced by USVI Ingot Company, they got that nice A-Mark logo on there. Now, A-Mark Precious Metals is one of the biggest companies that are still around today, but the reason that they're pertinent and relevant to this conversation that we're having with regards to USVI Ingot Company is that USVI Ingot Company produced many pieces, and this is probably the most common piece here for A-Mark Precious Metals. So the A-Mark Precious Metals flat bar, I like to call it, actually comes in 3 different variations. So if you're into collecting this bar, which doesn't have much to do with USVI Ingot Company, there are a couple lot numbers to kind of look out for. So you'll find that this number right here, which says A0102, that number will also sometimes say A0101 and also A0100. So that's something that you may want to look out for when it comes down to the A-Mark Precious Metals flat bar. 3 different lot numbers there. I just have one here in front of you, but there are 3 different ones, and that's pretty self-explanatory. So now that we've gotten this one out of the way, let's talk about this one right here. Now this one right here is actually called, in my opinion, I call it the USVI Ingot Company Chunky Stacker. And this is the original stacker, we like to call it. This is the first and ever stackable silver bar, and it was produced by USVI Ingot Company, and these are actually produced in 1981, this particular bar. Now what's interesting is that there are a couple, actually quite a few variations of this, and that mountain of bars that you saw on Silverstruck's channel, that is produced of these bars, many of these bars. And these bars, as if you were paying attention to his video, contain various lot numbers on the back. And in fact, we've done a video in the past where we went through a deep dive of all the different lot numbers, and we're trying to figure out what the range was, the low end and the high end of the range. And one of the takeaways from that video, if you recall that video, was that in this lot number, there'll be variations here. Not only will that number change, but actually sometimes there'll be lot numbers with no letter on the top and no letter on the bottom, and it'll just be a number in the middle. Sometimes it'll be A172S like this. Sometimes it'll be a different number in there in the middle. Sometimes it'll be no A prefix, and it'll just be a 172S, and there's no letter on the top. So it gets really confusing with respect to the lot numbers, but they range from anywhere from down in the 150s all the way up to the high 100s. And in fact, there is also a 300 lot number as well. But there's also a couple variations when it comes down to the bottom part here. Here you see it says USVI Ingot Company 1981. Well, there's also a variation that's undated, and that one won't say USVI Ingot Company, that one will say A-Mark Precious Metals. So that's a little bit more of a rare variation, but not as rare as a version that has double asterisks on both sides of that assay lot number circle. So let me show you those 2 variations that I was just talking about, because those are ones that you want to look out for, because they're quite a bit more scarce than just your typical 1981 chunky stacker. And something interesting to note about that double asterisk is that that one actually doesn't have a 1981 date, that has a 1980 date. So let's take a look at these a little bit closer, and we can see what we're talking about. So we look at this, and on the left side you got the double asterisk, and this is extremely scarce. I have gone through thousands of stackers, and I would say not even in every 100 that I look through do I find a double asterisk. It's very scarce. And you'll see that it's a 1980 date, and then on the right side you got an A-Mark Precious Metals with no date. And so that one's a little bit more easier to find than the double asterisk, but still very scarce compared to just a normal stacker. Now look at that. What I was saying is that there's lot numbers in the 300s. The A-Mark Precious Metals one has exactly that. This is a lot number of 301, and you'll see that 1980 double asterisk has a lot number of A154S. So that 150, I was saying the low end is the 150s. Well, the double asterisk is a 1980, meaning it was produced before 1981, meaning it was one of the earliest bars. I'm not 100% sure if the mintage is 1,000 on those double asterisks, but that's what I've heard some people say. And also notice here on the A-Mark Precious Metals bar, I just noticed this myself just now for the first time, but take a look at that 1 ounce Troy stamp. It looks slightly different there. You know, it's a little bit bolder there on the right. And all the text in general is a little bit bolder. So a very interesting thing to note there that I actually just figured out myself. So it's fun to learn things together. So we got these ones out of the way. Let's keep moving. So we did 1980, 1981, A-Mark Precious Metals logo there on the front. Then there's other variations of these same types of chunky stackers. This one right here also has an A-Mark logo, but the A-Mark logo looks quite a bit different. This is what I like to call the A-Mark oval logo chunky stacker. And you can see it's got silver written right there. Veda or something. Plata. So, on the back, 1 OZ Troy. Notice how that is different than what we saw over there where I said 1 ounce Troy, right? This is 1 OZ Troy, right? And actually, I don't have them in front of me, but there's actually a variation of this oval logo stacker where it says 1 ounce Troy, not 1 OZ Troy. So this is just the 1 OZ Troy variation that I've got in front of me, but keep in mind that there's also another variation with the 1 ounce Troy. Now take a look at this. This one right here is actually 1980 dated. So these ones actually predate actually the vast majority, if not all, of the AM logo bars. So these are actually an earlier variation, 1980. Similar reverse though. Next up, what we have, and these used to be pretty easy to find, I would say, they still pop up quite frequently, the Anaheim Metal Company bar. Now, recently I posted a video where I was going through a few 10 ounce variations, and those are also produced by USVI Ingot Company, but those are extremely rare. Very rarely will you come across the 10 ounce variations of this bar. However, the 1 ounce variations you see quite frequently on the secondary market, at least right now. It's not the cleanest stamp, but you do get an idea there. Anaheim Metal Company. Okay, and on the back, similar reverse once again. This particular lot number is an A172S. And there are different variations of these. Now here is the elusive San Diego Coin Exchange bar. And this one is very difficult to come by. And in fact, this one in particular has a very interesting reverse, which is also even more difficult to come by. Now, typically you'll see that there are a couple different variations, just like on this 1980 oval logo. There'll be a couple of variations just like that on the San Diego Coin Exchange bar, but this one is a third variation, which is extremely rare, and it's amazing because it's got an Anaheim Metal Company reverse. Interesting, right? So that same stamp that we saw here just now is imprinted there on the back of this, and this is an extremely rare variation. This I had to pay quite a premium. Now, normally the normal San Diego Coin Exchange bars also already sell in the hundreds of dollars per ounce premium. This one in particular is more than hundreds of dollars an ounce premium. Now, still hundreds of dollars an ounce premium, however, you know, more hundreds of dollars. So very elusive bar here, the San Diego Coin Exchange bar, but a beautiful bar nonetheless, and one that you know, as a avid USVI Ingot Company stacker or Ingot Company collector, you gotta have a variation of at least one variation of every one. So next up, we've got a slightly different variation, a little bit of a flatter bar here. Okay, so this one right here, you got 1 ounce Troy imprinted on the front, and you see it's like a rectangular, pointed edges, and much flatter. Still 1 Troy ounce though. And this one back here, take a look. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, these were produced in 1982, so I think these ones came out after these variations that we looked at. Whoopsie daisy. And over here, this was a 1980. At least that particular one was. Just so we have frame of reference. So this one's not dated here, but I do believe, if I do recall correctly, that these were 1982. And similar style to that, we've got USVI Ingot Company flat bar here, produced for C. Ryan and Associates out of Seattle, Washington. So this is a very nice bar, and this actually also, just like that Anaheim Metal Company bar, and also the actually normal AM logo bar, this also comes in a 10-ounce variation. But right now we're just covering the 1-ounce variations. We don't want to get too crazy, so we're just covering the 1-ounce variations that you want to look out for. And this also has a similar reverse to that flat bar we just looked at. And moving on, we're going to finish it up with the last bar, which is back to that chunky style here, and this one is what we like to call the big one. Okay, now this bar, just like that San Diego Coin Exchange bar, very difficult to obtain bar. When these sell, they sell at quite a premium, much more than these other bars, first bars that we looked at. All right, and finally, before we get into the rounds, we got to do this last bar. And this bar, I've got to say, I'm very, very fortunate and thankful that I was able to pick this up. I was able to get this from Larry Large Stacks. Now, Larry Large Stacks is a big collector when it comes down to USVI Ingot Company. And so if you're wanting to look at a gigantic behemoth of a stack of USVI Ingot Company bars and rounds, that's a great channel to check out. But I was fortunate enough to pick this up from him. And this is truthfully a bar that I've literally, in all my years of collecting USVI Ingot Company, I've never seen it even available for sale. Forget about being able to obtain it for an unreasonable amount of money. I didn't even have that option. I didn't even have an option to overpay for the bar. So it's a very, very elusive bar. You know, I said the San Diego Coin Exchange bar is elusive, and it is. But this is extremely, it's almost like we shouldn't, it shouldn't even be possible that we're looking at this, but we are. So it's a very, very interesting bar. It's the only USVI Ingot Company bar that's like flat, like a normal Engelhard bar, and it actually kind of almost resembles an Engelhard bar. So I'm very excited to be able to actually show you that in the flesh as we go through these. But this is truthfully a bar that, if you see it, definitely grab it. But wow, I never see them anymore. So moving on to rounds here. Before we get into these more difficult to find rounds, let's talk about these rounds here. These rounds are ones that people don't really know oftentimes that they were actually produced by USVI Ingot Company, because it's not readily apparent. It doesn't say USVI Ingot Company anywhere here on the piece. But after some research, they actually were. You know, according to an employee there, it actually was. Both of these produced. Now, these are both Monex rounds, but they were actually produced by the USVI Ingot Company for Monex. Now, one of these is dated 1982, and the other is actually a 1988 Trade Eagle. So let's talk a little bit about this one here that's a little bit easier to come by. And this is maybe something that some people are actually familiar with or have seen before, because it's pretty commonly seen on the market still. But actually, there's a couple different variations of this. There's two different variations, from my understanding. There's actually a Royal Canadian Mint version, and that one actually will contain a Royal Canadian Mint stamp right there on the top of the round. However, the ones without the Royal Canadian Mint stamp, from my research, are actually produced by USVI Ingot Company. So, from my understanding, USVI Ingot Company was actually the company that was originally striking these rounds, and then eventually the production moved over to the Royal Canadian Mint, and then the Royal Canadian Mint would start stamping their their logo there on the rounds as well. So there's two different variations to look out for. Maybe you're a collector of RCM stuff, and you may want to collect the Royal Canadian Mint Silver Eagle, because there's two variations as well. So the one without the Royal Canadian Mint stamp is actually a USVI Ingot Company produced round in 1982. That's called the Silver Eagle. So the 1982 Silver Eagle, and then you've got the 1988 Trade Eagle, and this one we actually have cut open from the original packaging. These used to come actually in booklets of 10 Trade Eagles, actually. And so this is one cut up from that original sheet, or that original booklet, and still been preserved there. And it's still in quite good condition, and this is actually covered in plastic here, right? So it's just kind of sealed in there still. And this is actually a $10 Trade Eagle, in the sense that, take a look at this. It says $10 Trade Eagle, and then it says, well, you can't see it there, but actually on the bottom there, once if we took this out of the packaging, oh no, it's right here on the front. I'm sorry. Take a look at that. It says Monex guarantees to repurchase this ingot for no less than $10 US until January 1988. How cool is that? So they would literally buy this back from me for $10. It's literally a trade eagle. But I don't even know what the price of silver was back then, but I think, you know, it was fluctuating quite a bit, so I don't know at that time if that was a good thing or a bad thing, but hey, it's better than an American silver eagle. Am I right? So that's a very, very cool piece of history right there. Also produced by USVI Ingot Company. This is the 1988 round here. Now we've got two other rounds here. And the reason I just have two here, there's very many actually variations of the poured rounds. It's because I just want to make it apparent here that there's a struck round to keep an eye out for, and poured rounds to keep an eye out for. Now the poured rounds sell at extremely high premiums, but so do the press rounds, but these even more so, because they're very cool. There's an interesting history behind those. So let's talk about the struck rounds first. Struck rounds are very awesome as well, in my opinion, because I just personally love the design. You got OZ1TR right there in a box, and this is all kind of like, it's so cool. It's such a cool round. Just look at that. And on the back is USVI Ingot Company. So this is a very nice round to keep an eye out for. They rarely do come on the market. I never just see them in the wild like that. So they sell at quite a premium. But when we're talking about premiums, man, these rounds, when it comes down to these rounds, these sell at an extreme premium. An extreme premium. Now, the thing about these poured rounds produced by USVI Ingot Company is that they were extremely experimental, and they're almost like each and every one that you look at will have slight variations here. Okay, so this one right here in particular is a Roman head, but you have very many other designs as well. Now there's a sun, there's a Pisces fish, there's a chariot round, there's so many different rounds. Okay, there's a half a dozen rounds. Okay, so there's different designs on the obverse, but then also on the reverse there's also other variations as well. And I really have no idea on the mintage on these, honestly, because, you know, some of these, this one is an extremely rare experimental reverse that's not even documented on the place where I research USVI Ingot Company stuff. And when it comes down to the Roman head, man, I have several reverse variations on the Roman head. So they were really all over the place and being very artistic when they were producing these rounds, and they're all kind of like oddly shaped because everything was kind of like hand pressed in a very crude way. Let's just put it that way. You can actually read about how these things were produced. I'll put a link to where I do all my research, or not all my research, but a lot of my research, initial research was done on this blog post that was done. It's kind of permanently been archived with respect to the different pieces that were kind of witnessed as an employee working at USVI Ingot Company. So the reverse is vary quite a bit, and that reverse matters, okay? And also the obverse matters. You know, some of these obverses are more common. I would say Roman head is one of the more common reverses, or is one of the more common obverses. But you know, depending on that reverse on that Roman head, the premiums could vary in double. You know what I'm saying? So you might have something selling in several hundreds of dollars per ounce, and then you've got another thing selling for a couple $1,000s an ounce, and that would be the difference between two different rounds that have the exact same front. You get what I'm saying? And then you have another round that has a different front, and all of a sudden that all of a sudden demands a premium of 2 to 3x. So the reason for that is because these poured rounds were produced in such limited quantities and were so seldom seen, and there are so many one-off, one-of-a-kind variations that it's kind of like a poured silver bar. You know, people who are into vintage silver, they have a very good understanding of the insanity that goes behind poured silver bar auctions, especially the more obscure poured silver bars. that are more sought after. These things can get bid up to crazy amounts. I mean, we've seen it time and time again. And so it's not a case of, oh, silver is just silver. Sometimes the design, the history behind the piece really truly does matter, and it demands, once it's put in front of the eyes of the correct person, it demands that premium. So this is one such piece where I actually don't even think this particular Roman head was not even the most expensive one that I bought, but I would say this is probably one of the most special ones that I have, because I've not really seen a reverse like that before. So it's interesting, the premiums can vary greatly when it comes down to more collectible stuff, but once it comes down to more common stuff, like if you're talking about more generic things, then the prices are very predictable. You can just rely on the spot price. That's why people say that, hey, vintage stuff, collectible stuff, that's a little bit more risky, and that's very true. Somebody on my auction was asking me just yesterday, I think it was, they were like, hey, I'm new to stacking, do you think I should buy all this vintage stuff, or do you think I should buy the more cheaper stuff? I'm like, I shouldn't answer that. I shouldn't answer that. You should make your own decision. However, I did answer that for him, and I said, when I started off, I stacked very much generic. I thought, the bigger the bar, the better, and the cheaper the bar, the better, and that's what I thought. And, I'm glad I thought that, honestly, because when you're starting off, actually, you want to make, do things a little bit more safely, right? If you don't collect collectibles things, then you will pay a cheaper price that is close to spot price. And when it comes down to when you have to sell your items to a vast majority of people, will pay you the melt value, right? The most coin shops, all these online dealers, with the exception of a few that maybe specialize in, are willing to pay a slight higher premium for the things that they're looking for. Typically, people will just pay you that melt value, and so that's why people say silver is just silver, but actually silver is not just silver. That's the thing. However, you have to be mindful as a buyer that when you're buying, you're also going to have to sell. So as initially, when I initially bought all those generics, I eventually converted those into the things that I wanted to convert them into. But initially that was good, because in that conversion process, if you are selling to somebody, and which I did, I sold most of my generic stuff not to the people who wanted, I sold most of my generic stuff to, an online dealer, so I got just a normal, near spot price, slightly above spot price for all of those items. At that time, there wasn't a big of an influx of people selling, so at that time you were getting a little bit higher of a premium. Now you're not getting as good of a premium now, but at that time I got a pretty good premium. It was above spot price, and that was good for me, because I bought that stuff close to spot price, I sold it close to spot price, and there wasn't any loss incurred, even if you're selling it a little bit lower, trading it a little bit lower. However, if you were paying a huge premium up front and then you're trading that out at spot price, you just lost a whole bunch of money. That's not good, right? So it only helps to buy items once you've kind of done your research. Higher premium items, I would say, or more collectible items. Once you've done your research on their collectability, once you have an understanding of what it is that you're buying, and whether that extra premium that you're paying you feel inherently is worth it, for whatever that may mean to you, that's when you may want to consider, in my opinion, buying the vintage. As somebody especially starting off, maybe it is probably safer to stick to the generic stuff. But that's just kind of a side rant that I wasn't planning on getting into. We were really trying to talk about the USVI Ingot Company stuff, but hey, maybe I'll just pose that question to you. What do you feel? Do you guys stack mostly generics, or do you stack mostly vintage? And what do you think? What do you think about that? Do you think that what do you think is the better idea? I don't know. What I told the person was that you should always have a plan for how you're going to get rid of your silver. I think a lot of stackers don't think about how they're going to get rid of their silver, and I think it's probably pretty important for you to do that. So I'm not saying that you need to turn into a silver seller necessarily, but definitely you need to be mindful about how you get rid of your silver, right? once that time comes, if that time comes. Maybe that time never comes, and so if that time never is going to come for you, maybe let me know that in the comments. So these are just some questions I thought I'd pose to you, and yeah, we'll turn it into a little bit of a philosophical video here to close things out. But anyways, I hope you have a great rest of the day and a great weekend ahead, and thanks for everybody who stuck it through and watched the entirety of this episode. If you did, say, if you're not first, you're last. Cheers. Oh, and if you haven't had a chance to yet, be sure to check out our social media landing page at solo.to/silverbarstacker. There you can find our direct website link, which is silverbarstacker.com, as well as our links to our other social media channels, such as this very YouTube channel, our Facebook page, our Instagram page, our TikTok page, our Twitter page, and we also have the link to our Whatnot page, which is where we actually run our live auctions and actually also have all of these same SBS drops that we hold. We run those same drops on our Whatnot store, and we also have live auctions happening literally all the time. So the way that you can be notified about those auctions is to be following us there on whatnot.com/user/silverbarstacker. And we hope to see you there, folks. Thank you, and have a great day.